Hey, this is Notser, and this is the Tier 9 Japanese destroyer, Kagero. It has 6 main guns, 8 torpedoes, 19 AA guns, a surface detection of 6.2 kilometers, top speed, 35 knots, total health, 15,100. For my modules, reduced crit chance on torpedo tubes and propulsion, better torpedo aim, faster rudder shift, and concealment. For my commander, situation awareness, basic firing training, faster turret traverse, lower cooldown on torpedoes, superintendent, and last stand. We are on the map Islands of Ice, and this is the new version. Obviously, there's way less islands visible on the mini-map. It is much more symmetrical. It's very nearly symmetrical. There are a couple islands in different places, but most of that is just flavor. The actual objective and the concealment is nearly identical. We're headed for B because B is the choice I want to make. It's the closest, it commands both A and C, and I have the ability to use my super long-range torpedoes on the enemy near B. The enemy is already capturing B, and I can infer that it is a destroyer. Their detection is fantastic, just like mine, so neither of us can see each other. So where could the destroyer be hiding? Initially, I believed he was hiding near one of the islands in the southwest side, probably. And we're going to try and head over and see if we detect him. Notice I'm not using camouflage. That's a little bit of a blunder. I always put camouflage on my destroyers. Even when I'm trying to increase my credit income, the destroyer lives and dies by concealment. But we still have very good concealment. 6.2 kilometers is just fine. And the enemy almost was able to capture it. We're able to get in the capture point. Speaking of getting in the capture point, I have statistics for this particular ship prior to this patch, and they lowered the speed on this ship by 2 knots. That's a pretty big nerf, and I have obviously the boost going, so I'm above the posted speed limit of 35 knots. But this ship only goes 35 knots in a straight line with no maneuvering. It is cruiser speed. So I really noticed that. I don't like it that they've nerfed it that much, considering. And while we're considering, I'm sending out my torpedoes concentrated on an indicator directly towards an enemy battleship. And there's a gaggle of enemies over there. And we also see the enemy Tier 7 Japanese destroyer, Hatsuharu. I love that name. He's backing up and he's going forward, so we adjust a little bit in front, and we're able to completely decap him. There's no reason for him to be in the capture, and he's going to move off. Now, I don't think he wants to fight me. Oh. And you can kind of hear, you can actually hear the rounds coming in. The audio adjustments that they put in with the hotfix, where they lowered the music a little bit and adjusted the gain on most other sources of audio, help to define the battlefield a little bit more. I can hear a little bit more of stuff falling around me, and I appreciate that. I was not aware that I was taking fire until obviously I felt it. And we sent out those torpedoes. Looks like they're going to get into that group of enemies. Oh, we get 1 torpedo and we cause flooding. And it incapacitated. 2 torpedoes make on it. 3, 4. And I was like, oh, 5? 5 torpedoes, first blood, and devastating strike. I had given up after they bypassed a ship that was the primary target, but apparently the guy sailed right into all my torpedoes, and we killed an enemy cruiser. I'm sure he really enjoyed this game, and he's going to look forward to playing against other Japanese destroyers. Yeah. And while those torpedoes were doing massive damage, I assumed that the Hatsuharu was going to go around that large island and come back towards B, but he never did. That's why I was kind of looking that way. I wanted to basically defend the territory from the enemy destroyer and prevent that maneuver. We do successfully capture the base, and now we have 2-1, and the enemy must answer our call. Strategically, they don't need to be as tight as they appear to be on my minimap. They are really hindering each other's ability to maneuver. There are no aircraft carriers in this match. There's no reason to concentrate your AA. You should stay spread out so each ship can maneuver, but also be in range to support. Kind of like my team is just north of me. Torpedoes are back up, and we're going to send them, again, concentrated towards this Amagi. And I hope he holds his heading. Also, they capitalized all of the ship names. I would just prefer a better, easier font to read, especially on this map in particular. The white on white is awful, and there's not enough shadow or outline to break up the font from the background. It's just so hard to see whenever you're pulled back and you're just trying to get a general idea. And I notice I'm spotted by an enemy destroyer. It's the Benson. I have just a little bit better detection than him, so I see him first. Obviously he sees me, and he pops his smoke. He is able to take out my propulsion, but with last stand, it's not really critical, and we try a blind fire, unsuccessful. It looks like the enemy is maneuvering to avoid the torpedoes, but you never know. The first set was completely a miss, but someone wasn't paying attention and sailed right in, and I got devastating strike on them. I'm going to try and counter the tactic that I believe the Benson is using, which is staying stationary in the smoke and engaging targets that he sees. He looked like he was slowing down when he was putting out the smoke. I'm going to try and sneak into the smoke. I am not spotted, obviously. Friendly sends out torpedoes. This kind of forces my hand. I really can't do exactly what I wanted to do, which is adjust my heading, be unpredictable. Maybe I might get spotted. I really have to just hold true and kind of go on the left side, and yep, he is there. You see the fire coming out of it, and we're spotted, but he has no way to drop his torpedoes. The angle is far too harsh. He immediately has his back guns on us, though. U.S. destroyer, great tracking. Japanese destroyer has terrible rate of fire, and we switch to our torpedoes to just get him out there. We send him in widespread because it's a close range target. I just want to get the most chance to get one on him. Don't use widespread at long range. You can see it's already spread out so much that it's not even going to hit this guy. And looking back on it, hindsight, I probably should have just stuck to the guns and tried to avoid taking damage. Oh, we're barely alive. We have to use smoke. We have to. Hopefully we can stay hidden. It's an Otago. It doesn't have great rate of fire, so we should be good. And, okay, we've held off our fire. We should be out of the danger zone. He tries one blind fire, unsuccessful. Don't blame him, but you can see my widespread torpedoes are going towards the general area where all of the enemy is. The Amagi looks to be avoiding it nicely, but anything can happen, right? People can lock in on their binocular view, not pay attention until it's too late. These torpedoes do massive damage at this tier. We generally take off 15 to 20k health per torpedo, and that you just need 2 of those on most cruisers. So the friendlies have swept through A. We've got a nice, I'd say, right angle from A and B, and we're kind of closing in on the enemy. There's a couple enemy ships over by C, and they can kind of break out, so it looks like 2 ships have chosen to try and take out that enemy near C. And I'm trying to decide who I should set up my next torpedo strike on. I have to be very careful. We have 2 enemy destroyers. What? What? A devastating strike? The guy got detonated. Look, look. Greenhorn. Who's Greenhorn? Greenhorn was a cruiser, another cruiser. Wow, I don't know how much health he had, but it's 0 now. The Otago sent out torpedoes. There's plenty of room. I believe he used widespread. There's plenty of room to completely fit our entire ship. Not a big deal. We send out our torpedoes, and we're kind of hoping that they're going to hold true. They're not going to maneuver that much, and we're going to be able to get another kill, or another torpedo strike at least. They're all sticking together. They're all playing really passively. This is what I'm afraid of from this design. There's so much open ocean that the battleships don't have any incentive to move forward, because theoretically friendly destroyers would spot for them and they would have the ability to do damage at range. I prefer to play my battleship sort of like a tank in an MMO. You're just going to take damage. You have great armor, great angling. As long as you have all of those in your favor, you can afford to have multiple enemies firing on your position for your team. These battleships want to be at max range. They're not really working together, and generally they're not getting a focus on the target. It's very difficult for them in this position, obviously. they don't have help, and they've probably lost half of their team. But you gotta make something happen, right? You gotta find some window of opportunity, and they just never did. They basically sat in the same area of the map and expected something to change. And it's not gonna change. The only thing that I regret is I regret the Benson engagement. I lost so much health, I have to play so much more passively than I would prefer. We're getting our torpedoes ready for another attack. We missed with our set that we sent before. We've got North Carolina, 2 Amagis, and I'm trying to get within range now that it's pretty much guaranteed that there's not a destroyer near them. 1 destroyer showed up on the west side, and another one showed up, I believe, on the southeast side. So we could get pretty close to these guys without being spotted. And we send out both sets concentrated on that North Carolina. He kind of looks like he's sailing a little lazy. And what I mean by that is he's just not angling preemptively. He's more of a player that would probably wait and see what happens before he decided to do something. And that can work most cases, but whenever you have an idea, and they should have an idea, that there's an enemy destroyer, especially a Japanese destroyer, in the area, you need to change the way you play the game. And it looks like we're going to have a good luck. Not all of them are going to hit, but we're going to get something to hit. And that is, of course, better than nothing. That's sort of how it's designed. There's a little bit too much room, and this was a narrow spread. We only get 1. It does 12,000 points of damage and causes flooding. Guarantee he has damage control available, and he's going to use it. But he is susceptible to fires from friendlies that are firing on his position. The enemy Amagi's kind of coming towards us. I don't really like to attack a target that's pointed straight at me. It's very easy to be narrow and avoid the torpedoes. We could theoretically use our guns, but the Japanese guns are pretty pathetic in range. 9.4. We don't have advanced firing because last stand is necessary on ships with such a short range on their guns, I think. Plus slow rate of fire. So the guns are really just a last ditch on these particular ships, but they can do really good damage. And at this point in the game, it feels pretty locked up. I'm trying to get in position to send the torpedoes. I'm moving in. I have my smoke now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my smoke, and I'm going to fire on his position. I'm going to hide in the smoke and rely on my teammates to scout. And 2,000 points of damage isn't that bad, but we chose to do that a little bit too late. The game was already decided well in advance of that, and look at the kind of points we got. 3 kills, 2 devastating first blood, over 3,000 base XP. Thank you. Yes, it feels good. We did 125,000 points of damage. Oh yeah. I hope you enjoyed seeing this Japanese destroyer. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you next time.